tech versus touch is a great way of framing it, and that is the dilemma, of course, that schools and governments across the world are dealing with. Neha, parents now have the additional responsibility of ensuring unimpeded access to learning while a deadly virus is on the prowl. How convinced are you with the idea of schools opening up?
I'm glad that I'm getting a chance to represent the entire parent community and we can bring this forth. And I also hope that everybody would be in agreement with me when I say that we can wait. And we must wait because there's nothing more important than staying healthy. And it's not just about exposing our children, but exposing every single member of the family, because these children are going to come back home in the end of the day. And with grandparents, people who are ailing in the houses, the risk is going to be high. So I certainly believe that we can wait. Plus, I'd also like to reflect upon the different researches that have gone on, the surveys that have been brought forth, where we have WHO say that less than 40% schools are equipped with something as basic as soap and water. So we're talking about times where sanitizers and masks are something that are supposed to be on 24/7. And with basic necessities not being met, I think we should hold our horses.
Dr. Monica, a new study carried out by Public Health England concluded that coronavirus outbreaks and infections in schools are rare, and that children are more likely to acquire the infection at home than in schools. So are homes really safer than schools?
I think this is an incredibly important program and an incredibly important debate that we're having. As an infectious disease doctor, there are ways to keep children, administrators, and teachers safe using basic public health principles. The question is, does the school equip to do that? There are very clear principles, actually. Masking, so that wearing the facial mask, keeping children together in smaller cohorts, hand hygiene, and also, if you can, keeping people away from each other, even though the masking is probably overwhelms the social distancing. If those can be accommodated in the school, it is better to open schools, because you're absolutely right that there have been many places that have opened successfully. There are many places where schools are actually a low likelihood of transmission, because the young children actually don't even have the receptor to get in the virus. But the question is the school equipped to do that? And if they're not, then they can't open. So it's actually a very clear choice. But it's not radioactive. The virus is not radioactive. We have very clear public health principles. And if those can be accommodated, I believe schools should be open.
Mr. Reddy, but are schools equipped, and how prepared can they be? There are so many things to keep in mind vis-a-vis social distancing norms. That's, of course, the most important aspect here as far as transmission of the virus is concerned. What factors should authorities, schools keep in mind, according to you?
Well, actually, we are dealing with a complex problem here, because we are not only dealing with the school environment, as important as it is, we are also dealing with the home environment. We are dealing with the transport between school and home, and the child, particularly older children, are likely to move around in the neighborhood. And now that there's a fair amount of opening up after the lockdown has been lifted, they may go to the market as well. So there are several points of exposure. It's not merely the school. But certainly once they go to the school, there has to be a fair amount of safety precautions applied in order to ensure that the exposure at the school is limited, whether it is between the staff members themselves, or between the staff and students, or between the students themselves. And therefore, smaller class sizes may be splitting into 2 sessions, morning and afternoon, for different classes, rather than have the whole day occupied, and supplementing it, of course, with distance education or home learning as much as possible. Also, certain rules that try and keep it as much in the open as possible, wherever possible, and ensure that even the way of movement, the route of movement into the class, outside the class, and in the school is marked out in such a way that there is a one-way directional movement so that there is no bumping into each other. And then, as Monica has very clearly said, protection is absolutely important from the point of view of face shields, that is particularly masks, and if possible, additional face shield as well for eye protection, or at least eyeglasses and goggles for the teachers. And these are the kind of things that will reduce viral transmission. And you can even teach them breathing exercises because that's good for the lung and protection. And also try and ensure that there could be other types of team sports which are non-contact, or even things like badminton and table tennis which are non-contact. So try and combine the learning objectives with the safety objectives in the school, but as much ventilation as possible. That is the critical element. And if we have closely packed rooms with very limited ventilation, then you have aerosols hanging around and the children are likely to get infected.
So multiple areas to be looked at, Lata Vaidyanathan, and that is what makes this such a complex challenge. Having children as young as 5 or 6 year old maintain distance of 6 feet, wear masks all day long. There are so many problems that parents, teachers have to be prepared for.
I completely agree. I think what Mr. Reddy said was absolutely right. All of that and more is what the school would look at, because the schools will need to deal with age groups which are very distinct and different. Now, if they are very little children, on one side, we feel that, they are low risk. On the other side, the number of people required as staff to look after them, besides their teachers, includes the DDs, includes the nursing staff in school, includes a whole lot of other people who need to take them to the bus, bring them back from the bus, or walk them for the walker parents. So there are a whole lot of other staff that will come in who are adult. And from the kind of places each one of them would come is not controllable. However, the easiest way to open school for some of them who think both from a socio-emotional point of view as well as a convenience point of view is because they do feel that the daycares and the early childhood classes must reopen. Also because the stay-at homes are also very challenging. You find that the young parents are out to work, and if they're not out to work, they're in the house and they're working full time, and there's no one to look after these little children and they cannot handle things themselves. But let's look at what is the situation that we see in some of the other countries.
Right.
I would think if we looked at the Israel example, they opened up pretty fast. They had to close down. So I think basically we are saying, please do not open schools, at least schools,
even
education
South Korea decided to shut schools in the Greater Seoul area.
Even South Korea decided,
yes.
And they have. Germany, which offered free testing twice a week for its teachers and students, even they had to close down.
Yes.
Hong Kong opened its shops, opened its schools, and strangely, just part of their cafeterias and other things they shut down. And if you look at other examples, Wuhan opened up in May, but they again closed down. Tokyo has kind of managed it a little. Tokyo and Germany have kind of managed it well in the sense that they're having very small numbers. The class sizes are very small. And even within those, they have just about less than 10 students per batch coming up in rotation or in shifts. The best is Denmark, which opened up their daycare centers. And that is one place which didn't even close down fully right through the pandemic. So if you look at all these examples, but there's, when we talk of examples like South Korea or Japan, for example, close to 99 or 98% of their households are internet connected and have all the wherewithals that can deliver education in a way that we want. And if you look at the examples of Kenya or India, the percentage is as low as 17 or 15. I want to say that, when we look at opening or closing, there cannot be one common rule for across countries and even within the country across the various districts.